Imagine being told you can't board a flight, not because of a delay or overbooking, but because of who you are. That's exactly what happened to Emily, a kind-hearted woman living with a disability, on what was supposed to be a routine trip to visit family. She approached the check-in counter with hope, but instead, she was met with cold indifference from the pilot himself. His harsh words and refusal left her stunned, humiliated, and on the verge of tears. Passengers around her watched in uncomfortable silence as Emily's dreams of making it home seemed to crumble. But just when it seemed like all hope was lost, something unexpected happened, something that would change the entire atmosphere of the airport in a matter of minutes. Stay with us as we unravel the twists and turns of this emotional journey and the powerful message that emerged from this heart-wrenching encounter. Emily stood frozen, clutching her boarding pass, her mind racing as she tried to process what had just happened. The pilot's dismissive tone echoed in her ears, his words cutting deeper than she expected. She had faced challenges before, people underestimating her because of her wheelchair. But this felt different. This wasn't just a bad day or a misunderstanding. This was blatant rejection. Around her, the terminal buzzed with activity, but it felt like the world had stopped. Travelers glanced her way, some with pity, others with unease, but no one stepped forward. She wondered if anyone would. Her heart ached as she thought about the family reunion waiting on the other side of this flight, the hugs she'd miss, the memories she wouldn't make. And then, out of the corner of her eye, Emily noticed something, a man standing a few feet away watching. His expression was unreadable, but his presence felt intentional. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that the man watching her wasn't just another bystander. Dressed in business casual, he had a calm but focused demeanor, his gaze shifting between her and the pilot. She wasn't sure if he was a witness, a potential ally, or just another curious onlooker. Meanwhile, the pilot had moved on, acting as if nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. Emily's stomach churned with frustration and sadness. She wanted to speak up, to explain that she'd flown countless times before without issue, but the words caught in her throat. Across the terminal, a young mother whispered to her child, pointing discreetly at Emily. A man in a suit shook his head and muttered something under his breath. The air felt thick with judgment, sympathy, and silence, every reaction blending together, none of it helpful. Then the man stepped forward. His voice was calm but firm. "Excuse me, but this isn't right." The man's words cut through the heavy silence like a sharp blade. Heads turned, and for the first time, Emily felt like she wasn't entirely alone. The pilot, who had been chatting casually with a crew member, stiffened and turned to face him. "This isn't your concern," the pilot replied, his voice cold and dismissive. "There are policies for a reason." The man didn't flinch. "Policies don't excuse discrimination," he said, his voice steady but growing louder, drawing more attention. "She has every right to be on this flight." Emily's heart pounded as she watched the exchange unfold. Passengers began murmuring, some nodding in agreement, while others shifted uncomfortably. The tension in the air was almost palpable. "Sir, I suggest you mind your own business," the pilot snapped, his authority slipping as his frustration grew. The man held his ground. "If doing the right thing makes this my business, then so be it." The pilot's face turned red, his composure slipping further as more passengers gathered around, curious and uneasy. But just as the tension reached its peak, a voice crackled over the intercom. "Attention, passengers waiting for Flight 782. The announcement began. Everyone fell silent, expecting the usual boarding update. Instead, the voice continued. "A supervisor is on the way to address a situation at Gate 14. We appreciate your patience." Emily's stomach dropped. She hadn't asked for a scene, she just wanted to get to her family. The man who had spoken up glanced at her, his expression softening. "This isn't about making trouble," he said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. "It's about making it right." The pilot, visibly flustered, leaned into a heated conversation with another staff member. Then, to everyone's surprise, he stormed off, leaving the gate unattended. Emily's pulse quickened. What was happening? The man at her side straightened, his determination unwavering, as the crowd buzzed with speculation. As the crowd murmured, the supervisor arrived, a composed woman with a sharp, professional demeanor. She scanned the scene quickly, her eyes landing on Emily, the man beside her, and the now empty space where the pilot had stood moments before. "Can someone explain what's going on here?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. The man stepped forward without hesitation. This young lady was denied boarding by the pilot for reasons that seem questionable at best, he explained. She has a valid ticket and every right to be on this flight. Emily nodded, her voice finally finding strength. "I've flown many times before," she added, her tone steady but emotional. "I just want to see my family." The supervisor listened intently, then turned to the remaining crew, who looked uncomfortable but confirmed Emily's story. After a tense pause, she made her decision. "Miss Emily," the supervisor said kindly, "you'll be on this flight. Let me personally ensure everything is arranged." A wave of relief washed over Emily, but just as the gate attendants began assisting her, the unexpected happened. From the back of the crowd, a man in a pilot's uniform stepped forward, not the original pilot, but someone new. "Hi," he said, his voice calm and steady. "I'm Captain James. I'll be taking over this flight, and Miss Emily, I look forward to having you as a passenger." The crowd erupted in applause, the tension melting into cheers and supportive smiles. Emily felt tears sting her eyes, overwhelmed by the shift from humiliation to kindness. But as she turned toward the boarding tunnel, she caught the eye of the man who had spoken up for her. "You didn't have to do all this," she said softly. He smiled. "Sometimes, all it takes is one voice to make things right." As Emily boarded the plane, her heart full of gratitude, she couldn't help but feel that this experience wasn't just a story about her, but about the power of standing up for others. As Emily settled into her seat, she couldn't stop replaying everything that had just happened. What began as a moment of deep humiliation had turned into an unforgettable lesson in courage and kindness. The passengers around her smiled warmly, a few even stopping by to offer words of encouragement before finding their seats. The man who had stood up for her gave her a small wave from across the aisle before returning to his own seat. His actions had not only changed her day, but reminded everyone watching of the importance of speaking up for what's right. As the plane lifted off, Emily gazed out the window, her heart lighter than it had been in days. This journey was more than a trip to see her family. It was a reminder of how powerful compassion can be. And somewhere in the clouds, she knew, the world had shifted just a little for the better.